Welcome, everyone, to today's Catholic Prison Ministry Coalition's webinar. And today we will be focusing and talking about boundaries within our respective Catholic prison ministries. Today, I'm ecstatic to be able to have with us Dr. Ragan Schriver from the University of Tennessee College of Social Work. Welcome back.
Thank you,
Dr. Schriver. And in just a moment, I will introduce Dr. Schriver. But first, as always, let us begin in prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father in heaven, we thank you for the gift of your life, of your being, that you invite each one of us to come to experience the majesty of your love that is with us at every moment. We thank you, Father, that you have called each one of us not only into your kingdom, but to be participants in your kingdom and in sharing the love and the mercy that each one of us have received. In our respective ministries, Father, we pray that you would bless each ministry represented in this webinar. And we pray especially that you would continue to bless each of the people, the names, the faces that we pour out our love to each and every day through our ministries. We pray all of this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. All right, and again, welcome if you're just joining us for today's webinar. My name is Father Dustin Fedden, and I am joined today by Dr. Ragan Schriver, who is an associate professor of practice at the University of Tennessee College of Social Work. And he is as well the director of the MSW program there at the Knoxville campus in Tennessee. Dr. Schriver has developed the Forensic Social Work Certificate Program. He also serves as the special assistant to the president of Catholic Charities USA and works with the team to develop integrated health programs within the CCUSA network. He previously served as executive director of Catholic Charities of East Tennessee for 15 years. He earned his MSW from Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, and became a licensed social worker in 2001. Dr. Schriver earned his Doctor of Psychology degree in 2016, and his capstone project was on trauma-informed care. While just reading this for the first time, Dr. Schriver, I am so looking forward to your presentation. It covers so much of the work that I know that I'm involved in, and I know so many of our viewers are engaged in as well. And just before I turn it over to you, I'd like to let everyone know that, as you all know, we'll engage in Q&A and address some of your questions and have a little bit more of a conversation at the latter part of today's webinar. But if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, please feel free to submit them in our chat box, wherever it is on your Zoom screen, or in the Q&A section as well. So with all of that said, Dr. Schriver, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Father. You made me feel very important or something with all that, the way you did that. Thank you so much. So I'm excited to be able to be here with you guys, and I'm just going to share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see that says boundary discussion, if you can see that in kind of a fancy background. So I just wanted to share some ideas that about the whole concept of boundaries and what that can mean for us as ministers, and hopefully this will be a little bit of a helpful reflection. But let's see. But to start off with, let's see if I can. There we go. Okay. So let's start with a little activity. So if you see these 9 dots, if this was on a piece of paper on you at your desk in front of you, and the directions were to use 4 straight lines connecting all of the 9 dots. All 9 dots need to be connected using 4 straight lines, and you cannot pick your pencil up off of the paper. Okay, see if you can solve that. How does that, do you think you can make that work? Give it a try before I put the answer up. Okay, here's the answer. You have to go outside the box. And so I feel that when we have a discussion about boundaries or think that, or any sort of an ethical conversation, sometimes I feel like we need to be inside this box, that I can't do this and I'm so limited with what I can or cannot do, that I become like, I kind of force myself in this box. But boundaries are freeing. They allow us to go outside of the box and think of new ways to relate to people and new ways to engage with others and new ways to just be in relationship with those that we're serving in the ministry that we're doing. So let's not feel like this boundary discussion is a list of don't do this, don't do that. I teach brand new social workers that are just coming into the field and just coming in interested. So a lot of time their answer is don't do this, don't do that. But really it's like, let's do that, but how can we do that in a way that's respectful and considerate to the client and values their dignity while also protecting my own health and my own value? That's just the bottom line. But there's creative ways to make really some good stuff with the discussion of boundaries. We can look to, of course, our Jesus as being, here's a person who clearly set very good, healthy boundaries for himself. He was clear about what he would do. He was clear about when he needed to take a break. He was clear about empowering other people to do things. When he sent the apostles out together to go do the ministry, he empowered them, and he didn't fiddle with what they were doing. He just wanted to give them the strength and the courage to go out and do that. And that's a boundary. That he was not enmeshed with them in some way. He had a healthy group of friends that were the 12. And he had disciples. So there were levels of friendship that he had throughout his ministerial life. And so I just feel that all that, just to say, when we're asking people who are ministers to set boundaries, sometimes there's a bit of a pushback. Hey, wait a minute, I want to give my whole life to this, which is a valid way to say it. But giving our whole life, as Jesus did, comes with a certain boundary to it, that we're only human, unlike him. Even though he was fully human as well, he was fully divine, but like did embrace his humanity and set boundaries for himself and set a good model for all of us. So hopefully we can reflect on that perfect example as we talk through some of these concepts. So here's a couple of concepts I just want to highlight for us as we begin this discussion. And I think it's caused us to get in touch with our vibes, our vibes. And the vibes are basically an acronym here for these different concepts as we begin the discussion of boundaries or anything sort of related to this discussion. And the first is values. When we're thinking about our ministry and the work that we're engaged in, it's important to reflect on what do I value? A value is something that I find to be important, something that's important and significant in my life. And if something is important and significant in my life, I'm going to allow that to guide my decision making. So I feel like values are almost like those buoys out in the lake, if you're out on a boat or a canoe or something, that tell you where not to go. They're the ones that sort of like guide your paddling as you kind of go through the daily experience of life. So when we think about values in relationship to the discussion of how am I going to set boundaries, what does that mean for me, to think about what is important for me, and that will guide me for how to make decisions. There are certain things I'll have to say no to. There are things I wouldn't love to say yes to. There are things that I'm going to say, yes, I need to do this, but only partially. So those are things that we use our values to help us make decisions and boundaries around what we will and won't do in our ministry life. Then the I in our vibes are the interests that we have, some special and some vested. So this is important in the discussion around boundaries as well. If we think about a vested interest, those are the things that maybe might impact our work life or how we're getting our financial benefit. So when things like that kind of get mixed in, it's important to just kind of reflect on that and think like, okay, well, how is my work life balanced here? And
Dr.
then
Schriver, real quick, sorry, just I hate to interrupt, but is it possible we're getting a few comments about to eliminate the preview screen and maybe reshare it to where we're just seeing one slide?
oh my goodness, I'm very sorry about that. I have it. mixed up here.
If
But wait,
possible. If not, I think we can still work with what we have, but just in case.
okay, I think I can do it. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, swap displays. Did that work?
Perfect.
Oh, great.
Perfect.
Okay, so sorry
Sorry,
about that.
sorry.
Thanks for helping me with that. Thank you. So just to continue rattling on, so like the interests, their special interests are things that might not be so particular around the financial benefit, but really more special, like something that we might be connected to or emotionally connected to, or a relationship that we have. Something like that might be related to that, if that makes sense. So those interests that we have are very important, and we want to do what we can to avoid conflicts of interest. So like if I'm engaged with someone maybe that in a ministry setting where maybe I might be guiding people to do something that I have some sort of an investment in, that might be a conflict of interest, something like that, to really kind of reflect on where are my multiple interests in my life and how are there potential conflicts for those interests. Then beliefs, those are the things that we hold to be true. And sometimes we come into contact with clients or maybe some of the people that we're serving through our ministries that might believe something very different than us. Beliefs are the things that we hold to be true and sacred and important and valuable, to us. And so we want to always be respectful of our own values as well. Our own beliefs, and be guardful of those, but also be respectful of other people's values. Of other people's beliefs. And how do we accept those and respect those and help somebody flourish within that? Then their ethics is also an important thing to consider. I know that there are standards for ethics in social work and counseling and psychology and all kinds of different professions that are codes of ethics. But the word ethics comes from a Greek word ethos. So when you think about practicing ethically or doing our ministry out of an ethical standpoint, the word ethos is really a relational term. If you think about the ethos of a relationship between a parent and a child, you think about the concepts that are related in that ethos, that there's respect, there's love, there's care, there's prudence in that relationship. Think about that. What's the ethos of the relationship between me as a minister and the person that I'm serving in whatever way? So what is that? And so any ethical practice that we're doing is relational. So that's why I think the discussion of boundaries is so important, because it's ethical. It's an ethical thing to think about. And then lastly are just slants. These are the things that we just normally do. I've always done it this way. I've always been that way. So that's important to just kind of check in with sometimes. Is the way that I've always done this, or the way that I've always said this, completely responsive to the needs of the person I'm ministering to? So let me just give a couple of quick values that I think that we as ministers, that we can draw from the Catholic social thought, Catholic social teaching, that are core values, I think, in the understanding of what a really solid, good boundary making is within this important ministry that y'all are doing. So first of all is the concept of social justice. Social justice is a term that we hear quite often. And when we're thinking about our relationship with our clients, the ethos of that is bound up in the concept of social justice. But what exactly is that? Social justice can be a combination of three other types of justice. So let me explain real quick here, and we can see this picture. If social justice is that perfect triangle that we've got in the image before us, then we think about the first aspect, that is commutative justice. Commutative justice is actually, that comes from a math term, commutative, that what's on one side of the equal sign is the same as what's on the other side of the equal sign. So A plus B equals B plus A. You see how different they are, yet they are both equal. So that's a foundational concept for us as we think about in our relationships with others that we're ministering to, that they're just as equal in dignity and worth and value as we are. And I think that what the ministry you're doing exhibits this in more than any other way. I think so many times our society says, oh, people who have been imprisoned are the dregs, are lower than us somehow. It's absolutely not true. You are recognizing the God in them, the divinity and the dignity and the worth in them, and seeing them as our equals. The second part of social justice that's important is the contributive justice. That's where we, as members of the society or members of a community, give of ourselves as we are able to the good of the community. So think about the time that you are giving in your ministry work. That's contributing yourself to the good of the community. Then the third part of social justice is the distributive justice. And this is where we think about how the goods of the community are distributed to those who need them the most. So think about a good, that we have, like time is an important gift or benefit that we share. So we think about, how am I going to distribute my time throughout the day or throughout my life so that I'm doing things that need to be cared for. So I'm caring for people that need it, or how that goes. So those three elements of social justice, of those different kinds of justice, come together to make this concept of social justice. Another really important element to think about, or value from our Catholic social thought, is the concept of human dignity. This is really important when we think about the boundaries that we're setting with the clients that we work with, or the people that we minister to. I don't know if any of you have ever seen that Netflix show about the Queen, The Crown, and on that, it's kind of interesting. She shows up in a room and people bow to her. I love that, because how neat that would be if we did that for everybody. Imagine if we walked around and we could see people and we recognize, oh, there's somebody that has a great amount of dignity. I'm gonna bow to that dignity in them. We do that sometimes, with namaste, that like I recognize the divinity in you that you recognize in me. And so I just hope that we really never forget that value of the dignity and value and worth of every single person. And maybe, like, even metaphorically, you could think about, how am I going to bow to that person that I'm ministering to? Another really important part of Catholic social thought is the preferential option for poor and vulnerable. I think that this is important to think about in boundaries, because it's about decision making. You may be thinking, well, gee, you just finished telling us about how equal everybody is and how everybody deserves, a great equality. But then there are points where we have to make decisions on, how am I going to spend my time? Am I going to spend my resources? What am I going to do to be able to spend my time here? Well, sometimes we have to make decisions. So when we make a decision, we should be thinking about, all right, I've got this good. Who needs it the most? Who is the most vulnerable in this situation that is going to benefit the most from whatever I'm able to offer to them? An example might be to think about, people who are poor are often closer to death than those who are non-poor. So when we think about that, we think we want to do what we can to help a person who's closer to death than somebody who is not. Here's an example. Here I am as a teacher in a classroom, and maybe one of the students falls out of their desk and bumps their head. Okay, well, I love all the students and I'm serving all the students in the classroom, but who am I going to probably pay attention to right at that moment? I'm going to pay attention to the student who's bumped his head and is a little bit more vulnerable or has a difficult situation going on. That's who I'm going to pay attention to. Not that I don't value and appreciate every other student who's in the room. Hopefully that kind of makes a little bit of a sense about this concept of preferential option for the poor. And then, just to say, grounded in our Catholic social mindset, our Catholic social thought, is the concept of equity. And so this is where we think about, yes, everyone is completely equal. So like the three people, little kids looking over the fence there, are valuable, dignified, wonderful people, but that doesn't mean that they need the same thing. One might need more of a box to stand on, one might not need a box at all. But ideally, we'd love to have liberation where there is nothing blocking us. But in this world that we live in, we sometimes have to kind of rethink some of those things. So hopefully that makes sense about the concept of equity. Those that need, we do what we can to help them receive. So now let's look a little bit more specifically at the concept of boundaries. Now, I've been talking about and using this word, but what exactly is a boundary? Basically, in the discussion of like the relationship that we would have with people that we're ministering to, the concept is basically what's written here on this slide. It's kind of a construct, really. It's a mental construct. It's not something that we really see or can touch, but it's really a concept or a construct that delineates me or a subsystem that I'm a part of as separate between other people and or other subsystems. It's kind of permeable and it can be a little bit ambiguous, but it's sort of this division or this clarity that defines me as separate from you, or me and my family as separate from you and your family, or me and my religious community with you and your religious community, or whatever that is, that boundary that is drawn drawn in quotes around us that helps us clarify what unit is what. A really, really important thing to think about as far as boundaries are internal boundaries within my own self. So when I think about there are parts of my life that are not work, that I like to go running, I like to play tennis, I love to go hiking in the mountains, I hang out with my friends, I do that stuff. But then also doing that allows me to be able to do my work, to check my email when I need to respond to the telephone when I need to. But I need to set some sort of a boundary where there are times that I'm not emailing, that I'm doing my thing. So those internal boundaries are very, very important. And I think if I've got clear boundaries within myself, then I can really be much more available to the client that or the person that I'm ministering to. I think that's just really important. And I would just encourage everybody to think that through. I have done terrible mistakes of not doing that, that my yellow and blue were always green. And like I was never really available to my friends and family and never really available to the people that I was working with because I was just blending it so much. So I feel like I let my work oftentimes eclipse what I was doing personally, and then I wasn't able to fully give what I needed to give to my ministry work. So please learn from my little mistake here, and please do what you can to guard that value, that boundary for yourself. So now, where did this concept of boundaries kind of come from, and why is it important in our discussion of relationships with one-on-one to each other? Well, really, I think we could probably look back to the discussion from Sigmund Freud. Today, I was teaching the concept of psychodynamic therapy to my students this morning, and one person raised their hand and said that Freud was weird. Okay, well, pretty weird, yeah, but he did come up with some foundational ideas that we still talk about today. One being the idea of boundaries. The idea originally in Freudian approach was that the therapist was to be a blank slate, that the client then imposed their unconscious ways of relating and unconscious ways of being in the world on the therapist or on the psychologist or whoever, the social worker. So there was this, the boundary was that you know nothing about me. You don't know if I have a family. You don't know anything, what I like or don't like. I am just there to help explore your unconscious. Okay, well, so time has gone on and we don't approach it that way anymore. There is transference and countertransference that I'll talk about here in a little bit, but we're not that blank slate. We don't want to show up to the people in a setting where things are cold and they're behind bars and there's cold and difficult and just be just a blank slate. We want to be a real human being and be engaged with them. We're giving the gift of self to the person in that moment. So how do I do so in a way that's respectful of me keeping my own life and who I am in relationship to who you are? There's another thing to kind of think about here, and that's a little bit of the biology of it all. You know, when we are in a friendship or a love relationship or a family relationship, there are these different things that happen in our brain, these mirror neurons that kind of reflect one to the other, and that kind of strengthens a connection, one person to the other. There's also a chemical that's released called oxytocin, and that's the kind of some people call it the love chemical, that you kind of feel good or feel there's a good feeling when you're in relationship with someone. So when you help somebody or available to someone and somebody says something positive back to you, there's a biological reward. You begin to feel more relaxed and more comfortable and whatever that is. So that's really happening to you. So when we start feeling that, just to be aware and realize that not always does my brain realize that this isn't like my best friend that I'm having coffee with. My brain might not realize that this is somebody that I'm ministering to because I'm still having that same chemical reaction. So I think it's important just for us always to be a little bit aware. I'm real and I'm really in a relationship with this person that I'm ministering to, but maybe my brain is releasing chemicals that might be confusing. Do I have feelings for this person? Do I have friendship feelings for this person? My brain's telling me I have this. But what I have to realize is look around at the situation. I am in a situation, I'm in a context where that feeling might not be completely want to be followed through with, if that makes sense. Then there's the other element of the attachment history that each of us have. Our brains, the architecture of our brains really does develop through time in relationship to primary caregivers. You know, typically we think of that as the parents of the child, that early on needs are being met, there's eye-to-eye contact with the infant, and the infant learns to have that mirror neuron connection. The child has physical touch with the parent, and they learn what that is, and then begin learning who the child is in separate relationship to the parent. That attachment history is really important. Sometimes we as ministers need to kind of stop and think, gee, what has been my relationship style? What has been my attachment style to my friends and my family and other people that have been coworkers to me? And if I think about that and think, okay, I've been pretty consistently available to people or whatever that's been, am I bringing that same thing to ministry? So we would never want my own struggles or the difficulty that I had as a young person, maybe in attaching or in relationship to my own family, be something that might be difficult in my relationship in a ministerial relationship. So all that stuff, that there's biology to it too. So we can't forget that. Um, I just mentioned the idea of family stuff. So we could spend, of course, the next month talking about family dynamics with each of us probably. But oftentimes we need to realize that sometimes my way of relating in my family is something that I go out and do in the rest of the world. That's a key component of like the concepts of family therapy, is that maybe the way that I related to my family are ways that I'm connecting or relating to the rest of the world. So here's a couple of things to look at, and when we're thinking about boundaries in our own family, and am I doing that in my ministry life? So triangulation, that's a fancy word really of just saying that that there's three people or three individuals in sort of a setting, that one relies on the other, and then maybe the third person gets left out. Maybe I'm having a difficulty with my spouse or something like that. If I had a spouse, then the spouse would be, maybe if I had difficulty with that person, then I might start talking to my child about that other person. And then there's a triangulation. It relieves the pressure or the difficulty that I might have with the spouse, but then it entangles this child into a relationship that really they have no business being involved in. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's very important to think about in this concept, that we don't want to create some sort of a triangulation where I'm talking about somebody else in the ministry process, or somebody else is talking to me about something that's happening, and then I'm kind of aligning with that person, and then the third person gets left out, something like that. That triangulation is a really important thing. I'm going to build on that in the next slide just for a second. But enmeshment is something that also happens within families, that like somehow I've lost the ability to understand where I begin and you end. So maybe I'm just so like your feelings become my feelings, or my dad's feelings become my feelings, or my feelings, my dad can't function without understanding my approval, that kind of thing. And sometimes we grow up in situations like that, and so some people do. And so we need to just be aware of that when I'm ministering to someone else, clearly that someone else, they have their own needs, they have their own feelings, they have their own thoughts, they have their own dreams and goals. So all that is theirs. I'm here, a separate person who's in a relationship with them, trying to help them achieve some of those things that they're involved with. Disengagement can be another way, of sometimes that we experience in families, and then subsystems too. That like there might be a smaller system within a family that's trying to deal with the difficulty or trying to deal with a strength or something in a family as well. So when we think about our own family dynamics, how did our siblings relate? How did our parents relate to us? All that kind of stuff is really worth a think through when we're engaging in a ministerial relationship with someone else. I just think that's an important element to think about. Now, I mentioned the word triangulation a minute ago. There's something else that plays out in this concept um, of boundaries, and that's this. We call it the drama triangle, and this is where I come in as a minister. And that when I come in as a minister, I'm coming in to establish that I'm here to save the day, and that maybe like maybe the person that you're ministering directly to, we see them or view them as a victim in a setup, and then the persecutor is the enemy. And then therefore that creates this triangle, and you become the savior in some way. And then I'm there. That feels really good. I feel good because I'm saving the person from this evil other thing. I would imagine that kind of thing plays out. Like if you're working with somebody who's imprisoned, and then maybe one of the guards is mean or something like that, or has has difficult way of doing their job, and then you become like, oh, well, I'm the good guy in this, and then the person who you've defined as a victim in this setting ends up seeing themselves as being disempowered and only relying on you. Our goal in ministry is to not make ourselves feel like a rescuer and feel really good that we've come to save the day. Our goal is to empower and help the person who's being ministered to recognize their value and their abilities and their skills, That doesn't mean we can't help them or help them discover some of those gifts and strengths and talents in themselves. But if we're setting ourselves up as like the rescuer in this and somebody else as the enemy or the persecutor or whatever, then we're just sort of setting up an unfair dynamic. And can in some ways make me as the provider or me as the minister invaluable in that person's life. Which isn't really helpful because the person probably spends most of their time without us. So if I become this thing that becomes so valuable to them, then they can't really function on their own or something like that. I don't know if that makes sense, but I sure hope so, because I think that's a dynamic that can often play out. And sometimes I know as a young social worker and as a young minister, I oftentimes thought, well, gee, I'm doing what's right because I'm really taking care of this person. And my definition of the person as a victim or as somebody who's disempowered, then that comes across. And I can convey that to the person to where they feel like they're a victim or they feel like that that they can't do it. I need the other person to do that for me. And then that breaks down the appropriate boundary of me being here as a support to you and you being as a valuable, good person that can do things for yourself too. I'm not saying that we don't just coldly distance ourselves in some way. I'm just saying that we're aware. Am I being brought into something, or am I allowing myself to be brought into something that might be a triangle, this drama triangle? We don't want drama. Okay, so let's see what else is here. Let's see. This is really, I think, an important kind of maybe thing to think about for us in our work or in our setting of boundaries. That there's kind of, this is what we think about in this kind of mindset around the discussion of boundaries, that there's porous, there's healthy, and there's rigid boundaries. Now, I think that sometimes we look at that middle, the healthy boundaries, as being like the Goldilocks of boundaries, that I really am always shooting for the semi-permeable or the healthy boundaries, where there are things that I'm able to take in, or a relationship that I'm able to take in or let in, and then others that I'm not going to allow in. Or maybe if I'm thinking about if I'm in a relationship with a person who's imprisoned or a person that is transitioning from prison, that I'm working with that person, to think about there are some things that I'm really going to easily and willingly share with that person, but there are some things that I'm going to keep to myself. And I think that's an important thing to think about. What exactly is that going to be? Now, if I have very porous boundaries, that means here's me, I'm an open book and I'm going to tell you everything about myself. And oftentimes that becomes more about me rather than it is about the other person. So when we have oftentimes think about maybe we have experienced sometimes someone who has porous boundaries, maybe that we know all kinds of things about them, but then when we leave the meeting or the interaction or the conversation, have they known anything about us? I don't know. Or are they so involved in that? The porous boundaries are like really all the good and all the bad are all kind of there, if that makes sense. So I feel like that can happen, and we learn those early on, like I said a minute ago, in family stuff. And sometimes we need to have porous boundaries in order to survive. If a child is in a situation where maybe the parents aren't providing for what the child needs, and then the child has to become a parent in the situation. We call that a parentified child. Maybe many people who have ended up imprisoned are people who have had to take that role and then maybe ended up in a path that wasn't that helpful for them in the rest of their development of their life. And so then they might try to pull you in, not out of any sort of malice, but might just not understand the porous nature of their boundaries. And we might find ourselves within that and kind of getting pulled into that. Let's just be aware of that and be on guard for that. Then there's the opposite end of the rigid boundaries, which are so solid, like nobody knows anything about me and I don't let anybody in. That can happen. It can also happen within a system. So this is important to think about, like from the boundary between you and the person that you're ministering to. If you're just like that Freudian blank slate, then are you really to be able to be available emotionally to the person and kind of share who you are and your gifts and your talents to that person? Or, are you a bit more distanced? I think that's important. Sometimes I feel like that if I was going to give advice to a person who's new to this type of ministry, I would err on the side of the more rigidity. And then as time goes on, kind of open up. There's that old thing, if you're a teacher, don't smile till Thanksgiving. I'm not sure if I'm down with that, but that thing about like, okay, I'm going to set up, like going to feel how this relationship is unfolding so that I can kind of get to where I allow the person to know a little bit more about me or whatever that I would like to share with that person. Sometimes the use of self is very important in a ministry relationship. Maybe like if a person who is imprisoned might say, I'm really struggling with my prayer life now because I just feel so distant or so distant from God, or is he going to listen to me, or is God going to understand this? And then I think for me to say, there have been times I've never been in prison, but wow, I've sure struggled with my own prayer life. I've felt so that's kind of a bonding moment. And you could kind of talk through, well, what are steps to become more, to get out of that feeling of a funk of your prayer life? And what's that like? So there is the use of self and the use of your own experience, which is within that healthy boundary thing. I don't have to tell them every single gory detail, about myself, but I sure can share some things. And I don't have to be so distant from them. So hopefully this image of looking at these porous, healthy, and rigid boundaries are helpful in our mindset to think about, where am I in this relationship? And hopefully I'm landing within the healthy part. I love this little image here, that we are not called to be so entangled with the person that when I go to bed at night, that's all I'm thinking about, or that I'm calling and checking every day, or every minute or something. And I'm also not on the other end, just like showing up and then not really engaging and then leaving, because ministry really is a gift of self, and we're giving ourselves to the person in some way, but we do so within that whatever that parameter is. And like I think you can see, disengaged is what we want to avoid, and entangled is what we want to avoid. But then how do we define that kind of, in quotes, Goldilocks? How do we find that perfect medium for ourselves? How do we find that for ourselves in the work that we're doing, in the placement that we're doing? So hopefully all that is just sort of a broad way of saying how important it is to really do some self-reflection on what it means to have boundaries. And I know that we're kind of getting towards, I better speed it up here. So one thing to also recognize is that there is a power differential. You can come and go. You can decide when you're going to meet the person or not. You can decide about what you know about the person. Maybe there might be things that you hear from a chart or from some other information that you've heard, that the person that you're working with may not have. So I just think that that's really important to recognize, that there is a power differential between you and the person that you're ministering to, and you're ministering with. We want to try to reduce that as much as possible by being a collaborative relationship with the person, but no matter what happens, no matter how much we try to be collaborative with the person, there is a power differential. So when we think about boundaries that we're setting with the person, it's only appropriate that we recognize that there are things that I'm going to share and that I'm not going to share, things that I'm going to do and that I'm not going to do. It would be unfair to say, hey, look, you're my buddy, you're my pal, but we need to recognize this power differential and not try to hide it away, but to just be aware of that, not impose it or anything like that, but just to say, hey, look, I'm aware of this, to ourselves. Context is key. So wherever you are in the ministry relationship with the person who has been imprisoned or the people that you're working with, to recognize what is the context, what's the context, and to always follow the guidelines of that context. So like, if you're only allowed to say certain things, or if you're only allowed to be in certain places, I just think the element of boundaries is really important. Even though we're ministers, and even though we might have more of a thing here, with more power, or whatever word we want to use, that we don't want to surpass anything that's a guideline with that. Something else that's really important is the concept of the types of boundaries that we're involved with. Are they reactive? Have I waited to the last minute to kind of like, I'm in a situation and I now need to respond. What am I going to do? Or have I been proactive? So if I've been proactive, I've been able to consistently enforce where I feel comfortable in the relationship with the person I'm ministering to. Have I been able to kind of convey to the person things that you can and cannot do? Things that you are able to do and things that you are not able to do. So I've been proactive. Maybe, who knows, like maybe a person who's in prison might say, hey, could you bring this to me? Well, maybe in the context of the ministry that you're involved in, you can't bring something to the person inside. So you've been able to be proactive about that early on, to say, hey, look, I just want to let you know that there's certain things. And when your no means no and your yes mean yes, to be super clear. I think that we need to be very concrete with people so that they see being proactive, that I'm conveying the information earlier on, rather than being caught and flat-footed in a situation where I'm being asked to do something I don't feel comfortable with, but did I really ever convey, or have I given a message to the client or to the person that's not accurate of what my role is here. I mentioned earlier this concept under the Freudian discussion around transference. Now, we may think of Freud as being a bygone thing, but we think about transference as being very real. Sometimes people who we are ministering to will have feelings or will have emotions toward us. And as you can see in the picture here, or in the slide here, it might be related to their own family. It might be related to how they relate to another gender or how they relate to another race. It might be some sort of authority issue that they're bringing about. It might be some sort of prejudice that they carry, and they're laying that upon you. And so that may happen. And I think the thing here for us is the boundary for ourselves is to say not to be hurt by that, not to be offended by something that somebody might put upon us. In a way, but just to try to like accept it, but also to be aware of it. Is the person relating to me almost too much here, or what? How are they putting too much on me, or too much of an expectation upon me? So that's just something to be aware of. That is going to happen. I feel like every ministerial and therapeutic relationship that I've been engaged with people, there's been this issue. I just want to bring it to your awareness. Also, something that also goes along with this is the concept of countertransference. This is when I, as the minister or the provider, have some sort of response, emotional, intellectual, or whatever response to this person that I'm working with. And they can come in two forms, seduction and aversion. And the word seduction there doesn't mean like a romantic kind of seduction, but it can be like, wow, I really want this person to like me. I must be liked by the people I'm ministering to, or I'm not a success. I mean, sometimes they're going to like us, sometimes they're not, but we're just there to provide what they need. I think being liked would help, but do I need to contort myself out of joint to be able to be liked by this person? No, I'm there to help empower them and to strengthen them and be who I am authentically in this relationship. And sometimes this can lead to where if there's that kind of seduction, hey, I want to bring this person along and get them on my team, whatever that would look like, then I might end up kind of blurring the boundary and end up being maybe it's disclosing too much or whatever that would go with it. That can sometimes make the person you're ministering to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Wow, they've told me something huge. Can I handle this? That if they've got that feeling, then it feels like there might be a sort of this seduction countertransference idea. Then there's the aversion countertransference. So maybe in our life, there might be some type of person, maybe, who knows, people with blonde hair, people with beards, people with brown eyes, who knows, we might have some sort of an aversion from history with people in this arena. Or this physical characteristics. So we might be relieved when they can't meet with us, or we might find ourselves being too hard on them. Hey, look, you need to do this kind of stuff. Just to be aware of that. If I'm doing that, I find myself relieved. Oh, good, they canceled today. Maybe I need to look, what's my countertransference situation here? Okay, now coming here at the rounding in at the end of the bend here, just a couple things to look at. Two more slides before we kind of wrap up for maybe some discussion and questions. Is that here are some things to think about that are tips. Hopefully all this stuff I've been prattling on about boundaries can help formulate a way for us to respond and for us to kind of go in proactively, aware of our own family history, aware of our own attachment stuff, aware of like emotions and feelings that we might have about persons that we're interacting with, to think about, to be sure of what is my role. Does the person that I'm ministering to, are they aware of my role? Am I aware of my role? I think that's super important to clarify it to ourselves and clarify it to our person. Maintain professionalism. I think that can go back to what I'm wearing. It can go back to what am I on time for my appointments? Am I ending the sessions or the visiting times on the expected time frame? Are the clarifications being met in this situation? So maintaining professionalism is really important. And I said this third one earlier when I talked about the context mattering, that we respect institutional rules. So I feel like if I say, oh, the visiting hours are over in 10 minutes, well, I'm a minister, I get to stay 20 minutes later. I'm not sure that saying that the rules don't apply to me is very helpful to somebody who's probably bound by rules every minute of their day. I think we want to recognize that we're all in this together. We're all subject to the rules. So that respecting institutional clarity is really important. Communicating clearly, that's very important. from the beginning about what my role is, what I'm here for, what I can and cannot do, how available I can be to the person, when they can contact me, when they can't contact me, if that's a part of it outside the situation. So I think that communication is really important from the beginning. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. If you're feeling inside of yourself, oh gosh, they're asking me to something that I just don't feel comfortable with, but I don't have the strength right now to say no to them because I want them to like me so bad or whatever might be going on, to kind of say, well, let me think about it and just kind of go back, maybe talk to your supervisor or talk to one of the colleagues and come back and report. Stay accountable. That's where that talk to a colleague thing. I feel like in social work, I always tell our students, you need to be in supervision when you're 90, and if you're still doing this work, you need to be in supervision, no matter how skilled or professional or how long you've been doing this. It's the professionalism. I mean, the collegiality and the supervision is really important. I'm experiencing this when I talk to my person. Does that sound like typical? That kind of thing, just bouncing it off. And then just a couple of other quick things. Protect your own privacy. That's very, very important. I mean, no matter who you're working with in whatever setting in ministry, you're allowed a personal life. You know, you're not expected to give that up. Guard your time. We need to be able to go hiking. We need to be able to go ride our bikes. We need to go out to dinner with our friends. We need to watch TV. We need to do that stuff. It's so important. Also, special favors and gifts. Now, I feel like that's always been super clarity. Here, I'm buying you something, but if I drew you this picture or if I made you this little craft, that's another story. But as opposed to some sort of other kind of gift, being compassionate but firm, that you're always available to the person in the context of the setting in which you're there. You are all in with them. All aspects of your life are kind of on hold while you're with this person, but when you go back out to your life, you're still available to your life. You know that you've done what you can for this person. So that's the self-care discussion. Are you doing things that are good for yourself? So maybe even after, like, if you've gone to a difficult meeting with someone who you're ministering to, maybe go get a milkshake, go take a walk, go spend time looking at some artwork, whatever it is that you like doing, to be able to do that little reward for yourself. And then this, lastly, all of that I've talked about can be grounded in scripture. We started off this conversation realizing that Jesus had some pretty strong boundaries. And then here we are in the end of the conversation to be able to look at just, there's zillions. I mean, I had to kind of weed out just a couple of scripture passages from Proverbs, from Corinthians, from Matthew. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. If I'm not caring for myself and caring for my heart, then can I give of myself? Then lastly, for my yoke is easy to bear, but the burden I give you is light. There's a clarification there. I'm sharing my ministry with you, but there's a boundary there. So anyway, this is all grounded in our faith, and I think it's just important that we're able to talk about it today. So I think I've overshot our plan a little bit, but but here's a little chance if anybody has any sort of question or point that they'd like to share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Reagan.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And yeah, so if there are any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I have and just to kind of, well, we have just a minute or two here, and for others to pop questions. I've got a lot of questions, but I'll limit it to at least one here now. Let me ask you, and because in the prisons today, at least in Florida, and I'm sure this isn't throughout the country, there's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of substance abuse that's happening in these facilities, and it's only increasing. What's the basic maybe tip with ministering to those that are actively using? And because I find in my experience, I mean, that drains me. I mean, I can go within 15 to 30 minutes, I'm ready to leave. A kind of manic state. What's your basic, if there's a basic, maybe just universal tip with ministering to those that are actively under the influence?
Yeah, I have 1,000 thoughts, and I don't know if any of them are right, but I think, like, when I think about this, there's a couple things that come a little bit, it's conflictual. I see why you're conflicted on it, because I think we're supposed to have this unconditional positive regard of this individual that we're working with, that there's no condition to it. I want to be present to you and I want to be a minister to you in whatever way, however you show up, I want to try to accept that. But then there's also the call to accountability. It's a bit of a paradox. If I'm going to minister to you, you need to be, I want you, or I feel like ideally it would be good if you were of your own kind of right setup here. I feel like that, I wonder if like a conversation about that even like that sort of the use of self in a way, like I want to be available and supportive to you, but it's hard for me when I'm experiencing this from you, that I understand that this is a struggle for you. I understand that this is an illness, a disease, or however you would say those things. But just we could be just as frank or as honest as we can. And then I think also then another thing that comes, can I help like the person understand what's a value that you have in your life? Like, what is your ultimate goal here? And is this going to help? Is this engagement in drugs or whatever, is that going to help you achieve that? So like creating some sort of a discrepancy in their behavior. I think some people, their ultimate goal might be just, I want to make it through the next 10 minutes. So I just want to take a drug so I can get through this place is horrible and I need to just do what I can to get through the next 10 minutes. Versus like, okay, I really want to get out of here, and I want to have people that I have supportive for me when I leave. Can we talk about that? And is engaging with me while under the influence going to help you reach your ultimate goal? I don't know if that's helpful at all or not,
Yes.
but a couple thoughts.
Yeah, especially the accountability piece. And I think typically, oftentimes, guys can appreciate that conversation and they're looking for that opportunity. So do have one question here from Katie Daly. And her one she enjoyed this so much and will watch it again here soon. Can you say a bit about intervention?
So intervention, I wonder if that meaning like in the situation where maybe there's something difficult going on with the person who's imprisoned, and then how do you appropriately engage or intervene in a difficulty that they're having?
Yeah, that's the best that I can kind of glean, Katie, if you have a note to clarify that. But that's what I took from it.
I think like for myself, when okay, somebody's having a difficulty. I'm visiting with someone who's imprisoned, and they're expressing to me a great deal of sadness about something. I feel like that I need to think about the boundary within myself. Like I don't know how to do dialectical behavioral therapy or something like that, but I do know how to have inside myself. I know how to be present to a person. I know how to listen to a person. I know how to help kind of be there with them and be in a. So that's an intervention in itself. And I think sometimes we forget, like, gosh, I just don't have the skill to be able to do dialectical behavior therapy, or or psychodynamic, whatever thing. Well, we don't need that. The real healing comes from me being present to that person. There was a research study that was done where the outcomes of people in counseling were evaluated, and there was a control group and then a treatment group. The control group that only talked to the receptionist in the counseling office did just as well as the people that went in for therapeutic counseling. So it's the therapeutic. What's therapeutic in what the intervention is, I think, really is the relationship. I mean, I know, like, I worked in an alternative sentencing program, and I felt like that the people just respected that somebody was there for them and that was consistently there for them when maybe a lot of people had dropped them. I'm sure you see that every day. How many people have just walked off and left people because they have been imprisoned, but yet you're still showing up, and that's an intervention. And I know, like, being present with the person when they're sad or mad or glad, that's an intervention. I hope that you recognize that. That's it.
So beautifully put, Reagan. We're going to do one other question. We've got about another 2 minutes or so here. So this is from Alfredo. What habits do you recommend to avoid transferring the pain from prison to home?
So like when I go to the prison, I experience this pain. Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, great question. That's a great, like, kind of boundary question too. Okay. So this I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to think this is weird, but because it is kind of weird. But so my first job was in an eating disorder unit, and my first therapy job. So I would leave there every night, just picturing those people and their physical states and their emotional states and the things they told me. I just know stuff was going. So I just left there every night, super bummed out, and so I lived in a house with a couple other guys, and like they'd be like, "Wow, you don't seem very good tonight." Well, what I did was I got this idea from somebody else and I began doing it. I sat down in the same chair on the way out of the hospital unit that night, and I pictured my clients being put into this very nice box. They were in a nice box with like sort of like a comfortable comforters and pillows, and they were in there and they were safe. And I kind of closed this golden box. This is all in my mind. And I closed it, and they were safe, and they were content, and they were contained, and they were safely there. And then I went home, and I think that did make a difference in me. That I can't do anything when I'm at home for the people. Me worrying about it isn't going to help, or me being sad about it isn't going to help. But like I'm just know that they're going to have to be safe there, and I'm going to leave them there until the next time I come. Whatever mental thing that you can make a ritual out of separating what you have experienced in this very painful place of a prison to go to your home and be available to your family. I feel like some sort of ritual would be a great thing. That's why we as Catholics, I think, are so into rituals, because they help us kind of codify something in our heart and our life, and it makes sense, and it ritualizes and makes real something that's true. So there is a true separation between the workplace and the home place. So what am I ritualizing to make that real for myself, if that makes sense?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, it does. And Katie adds that she pretends that she's hanging everything on the bush outside. It doesn't even get into the car with me when she gets into the car. I know that for me, as you know, we have to pray the divine office, and I would leave the facility and I would pray a psalm or one of the psalms, just right to God our refuge, only you have the power. And I would think of the names, the faces that I had witnessed that day, and when that, like you said, it's almost, well, it's not almost, it is an act of cleansing, of offering, of emptying, perhaps even as well. Well, this has been so good, and I have a feeling, well, I know a lot of folks are going to watch this again, and I would hope that maybe we can have another discussion here soon. Again, Ragan, this is so badly needed. I can tell you in my own personal ministry, when you're in close proximity to people with such extensive traumas, addictions, it's hard not to become porous, or to shut down and in a kind of rigid way. That healthy boundary it seems to me, it's a real practice. It's a discipline in some form to kind of maintain that daily. Well, again, Dr. Schriver, thank you so much. We look forward to perhaps seeing you again and hearing you again soon. And again, prayers and blessings for all of you out there viewing, and for your respective ministries and those to whom you minister to. God bless you.